The glass facade of Victor Holden's penthouse glowed like a beacon above the skyline, its windows refracting the neon haze of the city. Drones zipped between towers, delivering parcels, ads, and gossip alike, their lights blinking in coded patterns only algorithms could pass. Lena Holden stood on the landing deck, clutching the strap of her modest bag. Everyone else would arrive by chauffeured hovercars. She'd taken the commuter lift. The difference wasn't lost on her family, and it wouldn't be ignored tonight. Her reflection stared back at her from the chrome door. Dark hair tied neatly, jacket simple but well cut, no luxury brand tags glowing at the seams. She'd chosen deliberately, sleek enough not to be mocked for sloppiness, understated enough to provoke no compliments, the safest middle ground. The door slid open with a hiss, ushering her into the penthouse foyer where holographic koi swam across marble floors, their scales flickering when feet disturbed their projection. A thin line of music, algorithm-generated jazz, too perfect to be human, drifted through the air. "Lena!" came a voice. Aunt Clara, gliding toward her in a dress coded to shift color with her pulse. At the moment, it pulsed smug lavender. "You're early." That's sweet, sweet meant provincial, sweet meant predictable. Lena forced a smile. "Traffic was light," she said. "I guess the algorithms wanted me here." Clara's eyes flicked over Lena's outfit the way scanners looked for counterfeit IDs. Satisfied with her judgment, she kissed the air near Lena's cheek. Inside the dining hall, family members clustered in constellations of wealth and ambition. Her cousins' suits shimmered faintly with embedded displays, scrolling their stock tickers, auto-updating their reputation scores. Every handshake left a glowing trace, confirming identity, wealth, and rank. Lena had disabled that feature on her own interface long ago. Too much noise, too much measuring. Uncle Victor presided at the head, broad-shouldered and immaculate, in a suit that whispered fabric stats to anyone within range. His smile was a weapon, warm for clients, sharp for family. Tonight it sharpened when he saw Lena. "Ah, the artist has arrived," he said loudly enough for all to hear. "Our family's rebel marketer. Come, sit. You must tell us about the campaign you're working on for, what was it, organic toothpaste?" The cousins laughed. "It's a clean market," Lena replied evenly, sliding into her seat. "Untapped, actually. Some of us value innovation over imitation." A few eyebrows lifted. Most went back to their drinks. Plates hovered into place along the long table, balanced by invisible stabilizers. Aromas of synthetically perfected spices mingled with the real saffron, truffle, basil grown in Victor's private vertical farm. The family ate wealth, too. Every bite said so. Cousin Daniel launched into a story about his latest merger. "We closed at 800 million. Imagine the headline metrics. My profile shot up by 12 points overnight, and I didn't even break a sweat." "That's because you let the lawyers do all the work," muttered another cousin, Tara, who had just joined a corporate law AI consultancy. "Speaking of, my firm was the one to draft your deal. You're welcome." The banter rolled on, equal parts rivalry and self-advertisement. Their reputation scores glimmered faintly above their wrists, like halos measured in numbers. Lena cut her food slowly, tasting more silence than flavor. This ritual was old. Everyone flaunted, everyone competed, and Lena was the cautionary tale, the one who had chosen a small life. "So, Lena," Clara began, turning the attention deliberately, "how is your little apartment?" "Still cozy." Her voice carried the practiced tone of someone commenting on a stray kitten. Lena lifted her glass. "It fits me perfectly." "Oh, of course," Clara said, "though you really should think bigger. My daughter just signed a lease in the Aurora complex, 80 floors up, glass walls, AI kitchen. Not that you'd need that much space, but it's good for entertaining, you know?" Cousin Elise chimed in, showing the shimmer of her dress as if the fabric itself were part of the conversation. "I couldn't imagine living in something less than 200 square meters. I'd suffocate. Some people don't need space to breathe, Lena said, her tone casual. They make their own. Grandpa chuckled softly at the far end, unheard by most. His thin frame bent slightly over his plate, eyes gleaming with a humour no one else caught. He hadn't spoken yet, and that silence had weight. The evening stretched. The more they talked, the smaller Lena was painted in their eyes. She kept her face neutral, but inside, a pulse of irritation tapped like a code. She could end this. She could tell them what she'd built, the project she'd launched quietly without fanfare, the one that was growing faster than any of Daniel's mergers. But she held it back. They wouldn't understand yet. Timing was everything. Instead, she watched, observed, listened to the cracks in their confidence. Daniel bragged too hard. Elise laughed too loud. Uncle Victor steered every conversation back to himself. Power was a fragile performance, and she saw the seams. The arrival halfway through the main course, the door opened with a discreet chime. Conversation faltered as a new figure entered. Tall, tailored, his jacket matte black with subtle circuitry woven like veins. His smile was quick, ironic, and it landed directly on Lena as if they shared a private joke. "Apologies for the delay," he said smoothly. "The city grid locked me in a loop." "I think it was punishing me for being too charming." Laughter rippled. Even Victor's sternness eased. Adrian was a family friend's son, but his presence carried weight beyond that. Reputation score glowing bright, though he wore it lightly, as if he didn't need to flaunt it. Lena's fork paused halfway to her mouth. She hadn't expected him. She'd met him only once before, briefly, at a conference reception. He'd remembered her name. Now he slid into the empty chair across from her, eyes catching hers with deliberate mischief. Conversation resumed, louder, to compensate. Adrian let it swirl before leaning back, studying the table. "So," he said, "what did I miss?" Victor grinned. "The usual, Daniel's empire, Tara's firm, Elise's wardrobe, and Lena's humble living arrangements." Polite chuckles rose again. Lena's jaw tightened. Adrian tilted his head as if he'd misheard. "Humble?" He looked at Lena. "Wait, which apartment are we talking about?" "The tiny one," Clara supplied helpfully. "She insists it's all she needs." Adrian's mouth curved into a smirk. "Tiny apartment? That's funny. I've been trying to rent in that building. The skyline view from the penthouse is unmatched." "You mean to tell me Lena already lives there?" The room froze. Knives paused above plates. Elise's smile faltered. Daniel frowned. Grandpa's chuckle broke the silence, low and delighted. Lena felt the shift ripple like electricity through the table. For the first time all evening, every eye was on her, but not with pity, with something else. Curiosity. She set her fork down gently, pulse steady, though inside heat rushed to her face. She hadn't planned for this. Adrian's timing was uninvited, perfect, dangerous. Victor recovered first, laughter tight around the edges. "Adrian, you must be mistaken. Lena couldn't possibly—" "I don't mistake skyline views," Adrian said, still watching Lena. "Unless, of course, you've moved since we last talked." He said it casually, but the implication hung. They'd spoken. Privately, recently. Lena lifted her glass, hiding a smile behind it. "No mistake," she said. "I suppose word just hasn't travelled yet." The silence that followed was sharp, fragile. Then voices rose at once, questions layered over disbelief. "Daniel, wait, how did you—" "Elise, that building is invitation only." "Clara, but you never said—" Grandpa's eyes gleamed. Adrian's smirk deepened. And Lena, for the first time that night, felt the balance tilt. The hush that followed Adrian's line had a texture. It was velvet with a snag in it, the kind that catches skin when you think you're safe. Lena felt it flex around the table, press against her collarbones, then tear lightly as the first voices tried to stitch the moment back together. Uncle Victor cleared his throat. A command, not a sound. Adrian is teasing you, Lily. He hadn't called her that since she was 12. It was the name he used when he wanted her small. She lives near the river in… What is it, Lena? A creative quarter. He turned the last two words like a lemon rind over a glass, aromatic, dismissive. Adrian didn't look away from Lena. That true? He asked. He let the words be simple and clean. Lena took the beat he gave her. She didn't owe the room a story. My lease is fine, she said, and reached for her water. The glass chimed when it met the table, thin crystal, a note pure enough to make the AR koi ripple in the marble below. Cousin Daniel jumped in with the relief of a man finding a familiar step. Lease? See? He laughed too hard. The display strip threaded into his lapel flashed a microscopic uptick in his reputation score. He angled his shoulder so the table could see. Speaking of prime assets, I just picked up the new Porsche, full electric, custom trim, ghost paint. She levitates right onto the skyway, 0 to 200 in 8 seconds. You can feel the pull in your stomach. Elise rolled her eyes with performative affection. So masculine, she said. We get it. It's fast. Adrian reached for the bread and didn't take a piece, just thumbed at the crust as if testing honesty. Funny, he said, mild esteem. Lena's building has better parking than that car deserves. Aunt Clara's pulse dress flashed a warning coral, then calmed itself to mauve again. Well, she said, and her smile showed all of her teeth. It's sweet you two know each other's little neighborhoods. Elise rubbed the edge of her earlobe, where her cuff displayed a tightly curated feed of the dinner. The feed watched them back, measuring posture, tone, sentiment. Adrian, darling, that building is invitation only. Adrian murmured. His gaze didn't leave Lena's. It was a question, and also not a question. She felt the table leaning toward her without moving, the way a crowd leans as a wave crosses it. It's an interesting neighborhood, Lena said. She rested her forearms lightly on the table, letting the false casualness read as an answer. Somewhere in the room's ceiling, a sensor took her body temperature and decided her calm was real. Grandpa exhaled, a tiny laugh that barely registered on the acoustics. He was the only one without any display, any glowing badge. His contentment was an analog instrument. Daniel tried to reclaim the air. Anyway, he said, and there was too much sugar in his tone. Skyline views are very, Instagrammable. But, you can't sleep on asset classes that move. He tapped his cuff. A holograph of a market chart rose briefly over his plate, had the decency to be translucent. I just moved into a private garage tier. The rent is a rounding error. On what, your bonus? Tara murmured. On my month, Daniel said, and shot her the smile he kept for litigators. Victor smiled down the table at no one. His smiles were built to travel to cameras. Speaking of moves, he said, we should toast to Daniel's deal. 800 million, strategic acquisition, synergy everywhere. He lifted his glass, his cuff registered the phrase strategic acquisition, and sent it to the feed with a weighted emphasis, the social equivalent of SEO. Glasses lifted. Lena's touched hers to the air without clinking anyone else's, a private sound in the swarm of performance. Wine smelled like expensive forests. Adrian didn't drink. He set his glass down again and picked up a tomato instead, a perfect red sphere with the skin of illusion. He bit into it and smiled when it tasted like nothing. Isn't it wild, he said to no one, to everyone, how success can be so loud? Victor's smile didn't twitch. Success likes a microphone. Maybe, Adrian said. He dabbed at his mouth with a napkin that knew when to stop. But sometimes the quiet rooms hold the real music. Clara lifted her chin. Poetry, she said, and the word worked like a mosquito. She swatted the air with a laugh. Adrian is very charming. Lena, dear, why don't you tell us about your little projects? The toothpaste thing, organic toothpaste, Elise said. For people with vintage teeth, Tara snorted. Lena angled her plate, watching the koi swim under the soup bowl's shadow. If she tilted just right, the koi scales flashed a second layer of AR, their model numbers, their firmware versions. The house was layered everywhere with this: data pretending to be art, or art pretending to be data, depending on who needed to feel superior. She took her time. The thing about a secret was that it needed oxygen, but not a crowd. "Campaign's going well," she said. "It's not toothpaste." Clara blinked the way a person blinks when their interface displays a warning. "Oh?" "Close," Lena said. "It's a brand that knows how to not talk." "People are tired of being yelled at." Victor leaned forward. "Meaning what?" "Meaning," Lena said, and she smiled with the exact warmth she'd brought to her pitch decks. "We help companies stop interrupting. We make them listen. Then we help them make something worth saying." Tara's head tilted. "Like what?" "Adds that whisper." "Sometimes silence is the message," Lena said. "Sometimes we take a logo off a thing and it sells better. Sometimes we make a space online where nothing is for sale at all." "Elitist," Elise said, but she sounded uncertain, the way someone sounds when they recognize a cathedral but don't know the prayers. Daniel flushed. "So you're in anti-marketing?" Lena let it sit. "Something like that." Victor's curiosity showed at the corners of his mouth. Jealousy came to him like weather: predicted, accepted, never named. "And this pays the rent." "Better than that," Adrian said. "It pays attention." He laced his hands and set them on the table. "Attention is worth more than money right now." "Only if it's the right attention," Victor said smoothly. "Exactly," Adrian said. Lena ran her thumb along the stem of her glass. It squeaked. In the sound, she felt the ache of everything she wasn't saying. She could set their hair on fire if she wanted to. The contracts in her cloud were heavier than Daniel's car. The equity agreement sat like ballast in her chest, keeping her steady while they tossed metrics at the ceiling. The drones serving the table hummed around them like patient insects. Someone had designed the hum to be soothing. It failed. Everyone was a little too bright, a little too polished. The air smelled faintly of basil and ozone. Clara broke the pause. She did not like being outside the center. "Well," she said cheerfully. The dress took its cue and brightened a fraction. "Since we're on the topic of little luxuries, Elise has something to share." Elise's smile took shape. "I've been asked to front the new Sable line," she said casually. Her cuff bloomed an image of her in velvet that ate light. "Exclusive drop, limited run. I'll be on the Aurora screens all month," Tara clapped, the way one claps for a plane that has landed. Daniel whistled. Victor's pride radiated in dividends. "That's lovely," Lena said. She meant it. Elise preened, but looked sideways at Lena anyway, searching for a crack of envy. Adrian watched Lena, not Elise. Lena pretended not to notice and felt herself notice anyway. The feeds around the room pricked up their ectoplasmic ears. The house's ambient scraper captured the sound bites and leached them toward the grid. People with nothing to do on a Tuesday night would see half of this by morning, framed in fonts that made it look like news. Victor lifted a hand. The table stilled itself obediently. "Let's do this right," he said. "Let's have a round of, what shall we call it, status toasts." His eyes warmed. They did not soften. "We'll each share something we're proud of, a win, a plan. We'll raise each other up," he meant. "Perform for me, earn the chair." Lena felt a small, ridiculous urge to stand. Instead, she tightened her knees under the table and smiled at her plate. "Daniel," Victor said, "start us off." Daniel stood. His cuff kindly extended his height a fraction. "To speed," he said, "to deals that fluidly close, to products that belong to us now and companies that wish they did." He smirked at Tara. "To lawyers who keep up." "Cheers," Victor said. The room echoed it. "Tara," Victor said. Tara stood and talked about her firm's AI litigation project. It chewed on new regulations the way meat went through a grinder. She made jokes that were knives with party hats. "Clara," Victor said. Clara stood and beamed and pointed at Elise as if Elise were a yacht she'd commissioned. Elise did not seem to mind being pointed at. She was a yacht. The room admired her length. "Adrian," Victor said, and his voice softened with guest courtesy. "Join us." Adrian rose like water. "To rooms that don't shout," he said. His gaze skipped lightly over Daniel, who pretended not to feel it. "To conversations that make people lean in, to good stories, to people who don't announce themselves cryptic," Daniel muttered into his glass. "True," Grandpa said. It was the first time he'd spoken. The air rearranged around his word, like a flock around a hawk. "Lena," Victor said finally, and made a benevolent face that belonged on a coin. "We'll let the artist have the last word for this round." Her heart hopped. "Don't gloat, don't flinch, don't confuse quiet with invisible." Lena stood. The table's surface recognized her movement and sent a thin silver line spinning under her feet in a ring, a little spotlight that carried no light. "To small lives," she said. The room blinked. She let it hang. "To things you can hold without hands, to breathing in less space, to work that doesn't make a sound." She tipped her glass toward the end of the table, toward Grandpa. "To people who notice." Clara clinked at the air as if in agreement, though her dress went sullen and grey for a second. Victor's eyes calculated. Daniel looked bored and extra audible about it. Elise filmed her. Lena sat and felt Adrian's look brush the side of her face like a sleeve. The servers brought the next course, perfect lamb that had never met a field, clover honey lacquered on blue in the LEDs. The smell was sincere. The meat was not. "What I don't understand," Daniel said lightly, "is how one markets nothing." "You don't," Lena said. "You make room for what was already there." He made an elaborate show of puzzlement, then shared it with the table like a meme. Laughter rolled, shallow as a tray. Victor steepled his fingers. "I understand room," he said. "I built this one." He smiled. "Tell me, Lena, if I wanted to purchase an apartment in this building of yours, what is it called?" She let herself enjoy his ignorance. It was kind. "The Octave." "Ah," Victor said. His voice warmed with recognition that wasn't his own. He'd be filing it now, sending a silent servant to fetch a report. "And you have friends there?" Lena took a sip. "I have neighbours." "Neighbours?" Clara repeated, as if tasting a fruit and finding it too tart. Elise tapped the side of her glass. "Which floor?" she asked, bright. "Let me guess, 15? Sweet little one-bedroom. Mid-century finishes and, what's the phrase, clever use of space?" Adrian's smile went slow. "You don't need to guess." Elise cocked her head. "But guessing is half the fun." Lena put her glass down. "I prefer accuracy." For a heartbeat, Elise looked like someone had moved her stage an inch to the left. Then she laughed, bright and brittle. "You and your accuracy," she said. Daniel's cuff pinged. He glanced down, then schooled his face. A thread of something tightened in his jaw. Lena didn't need to see the message. She knew the tone of that particular ping, the PR team's little melodies. The dinner had been scraped and was already a slow leak onto the grid. The comments would be kind only to the ones who didn't need kindness. Victor noticed Daniel's flicker, filed it away. "We should move," he said. "Dessert in the garden." He stood, and the room adjusted to him the way water adjusts to a rock. Lena was still holding her breath when Adrian's hand appeared, palm up, asking not to touch so much as to escort. She didn't take it. She let the offer hang in the air like an ornament and moved beside him instead. In the hall, the garden opened like a secret only money knows. Exotic air wove up from a hidden HVAC lung. It smelled like rain from a country that didn't exist. Bioluminescent vines stole light from the city and rethreaded it into leaves. The garden pretended to be wild. A million lines of code kept it feral. Guests flowed into groups, screens unfolded from stones. Someone laughed with a volume calibrated to make strangers look. On a wall grown out of nothing, Victor's face appeared, 2 stories high, laughing like a man who didn't know he was being filmed. He did. Everything in this house was a mirror. Lena drifted to the edge of the path. She could watch this from anywhere. The drones saw her as a negative space. "Hungry?" Adrian asked at her shoulder. "Famished," Lena said, "but not for dessert." He smiled. "Walk." She glanced toward the crowd. Victor's attention was on Clara, who was adjusting the fall of Elise's dress like a stylist. Daniel was demonstrating a gesture set to Tara that would open a car without touching it. Grandpa had found a bench that pretended to be stone. "Fine," Lena said, and Adrian's eyes held exactly as much satisfaction as he let other people see. They slipped past a wall of engineered bamboo that played white noise at you if you were too honest within 10 feet. The kitchen entrance was hidden there, designed for staff and ghosts. They stepped through into light and stainless steel and the iron smell of hot devices. Robotic arms reset plates, human hands corrected their assumptions. A bowl of pomegranates bled prettily into a glass dish. A server nodded at Lena, the quick recognition of someone who shared a species with you, not a class. Lena nodded back and took 2 bottles off a shelf without asking. Real wine, not algorithmic. Her fingers found the cork in one bottle and twisted. The cork sighed. Adrian watched her watch the room. "You're letting them underestimate you," he said, voice just above the hum of the vents. He leaned close. Heat traveled from him to her by intention. "It makes you even more irresistible." She turned, a smile flickering like an impulse. "Irresistible," she said lightly. Her heart had not agreed to the pace increase. "Careful, you'll ruin your perfect guest reputation." "Maybe I like ruining it," he said. The corner of his mouth tipped. He did not move back. "For you?" The words lay between them, warm. The kitchen had no eyes that cared about gossip. It had only sensors that cared about temperature. The old hunger that had nothing to do with food put a soft hand on her ribs. Lena eased it off. "Don't flirt with me to win a room," she said. She kept the smile because it was a nice one. "I'm not a door." "I know," he said. His gaze didn't push. "I'm only at doors when I like what's behind them." "You don't know what's behind me." "I know enough." His voice lowered, not for secret, but for courtesy. "I know you built something that isn't for this house. I know you didn't tell anyone here because it would spoil it. I know you still showed up tonight because you're not afraid of rooms that forget your name." "That's a lot of knowing," Lena said. It could have sounded like a challenge. It didn't. "What else do you know?" He made an open hand. A little boy's gesture turned elegant by time. "I know their eyes. I've had them on me. They lift you when you perform and drop you when you blink. I'm bored of being lifted and dropped." He smiled, a little crooked. "I'm interested in the ground." She took a pull from the bottle and didn't make a face when it was very good. "The ground is unfashionable." "I like unfashionable," he said. "It stays." A server brushed past with a tray of citrus tarts that looked legally engineered. "You two need anything?" she asked softly, as if they were in a real kitchen, not a stage. "Just the corkscrew," Lena said. The server passed it, and Lena pocketed it out of habit, then set it back in the right place out of respect. Adrian bent closer, and this time she didn't step back. He smelled like cedar and the memory of rain. "If you want to tell them," he said, not pushing, "I'll give you a drum. If you choose not to, I'll be the wall you lean on while they play theirs." "Walls and doors," she said. "Are you a house?" "I'm a person who likes seeing people where they live," he said. "Where I live is quiet," she said. "Good," he said. "I'm tired of screaming." She laughed because he meant it and didn't make it tragic. "You're a strange guest." "You're a dangerous host," he said. The heat reached her cheeks and she let it. Outside, the garden had shifted to a low blue. The penthouse's faces glided past, soft focus, chasing Victor's gravity. Somewhere in the wall, the house decided the wine stock was lower than it liked and sent for more. "We should go," she said. "We should," he agreed. Neither of them moved. He leaned and spoke into the space next to her ear, the stage whisper that wasn't performance because there was no audience. "Do you want me to stop?" "No," she said, and then, because she believed in clean data, "but don't get sloppy." "Never," he said, and stepped back as if his feet obeyed. "Let's go make them nervous." They returned through the bamboo choir to the garden. The slice of absence they'd left in the air closed, but not fully. Eyes slid toward them and slid away. People in status rooms learn to pretend not to look. They are never better at pretending than when most interested. Clara's dress brightened when she saw Adrian at Lena's side. "There you two are," she sang. "We thought we'd lost you to the shrubbery." "Hard to resist," Adrian said, smiling. He was the kind of man who could make a plant feel complimented. Elise's gaze flicked from his collar to Lena's mouth. She hid the calculation with glam. "What are we drinking?" "Wine," Lena said. She handed Elise a glass. "It tastes like grapes." Elise laughed nicely, touched her glass to Lena's. "Cheers, cousin," to views. Daniel sauntered over, Portia Story coiled and ready. "So, I took the turbo out last night," he said to no one in particular, to everyone. "It pulled a G at the curve by the tower. The city grid pings you a little warning when you do that. Did you know?" "Is that what that ping was?" Tara asked dryly. "I thought it was your PR team begging you not to die." "They love me alive," Daniel said, and did the grin. "They have a rolling queue of content." "Do they?" Adrian said, looking fascinated. He sipped his wine for the first time and made a face like a secret. "I've always wondered what it's like to have a team to manage your humanity for you." Daniel's grin flickered. "It's optimal." "I'm sure," Adrian said. He let the curved smile show itself, flicked it like a coin, and moved his gaze to Lena as if she were air he preferred. Daniel swallowed it. Then he held up his palm. A small hologram of the Portia spun there, a toy for the godchild. "She parks herself," he said. "Good," Adrian said. "Lena's building has better parking than that car deserves." Laughter slid through the garden, this time more of it, some genuine. Daniel's jaw went rigid and then slack. "Cute," he said. "He's cute." Clara's hand fluttered. "Adrian, darling, what do you drive?" "Usually other people," he said. "Occasionally I walk." Clara blinked, and her dress misread the exchange enough to go pewter again before correcting. "How monastic." "Monastic," Elise repeated, playfully scandalized. "So hot." Victor arrived, presents turned to 11. He wore curiosity like cologne. "I haven't had my chat," he said to Lena. "Walk with me." It wasn't a request. It felt like a summons from a judge who never got reversed on appeal. Lena felt Adrian's glance. It was an offer without neediness. She shook her head once. "I've got this." He raised his glass in a tiny salute and let her go. Victor guided her down a path toward the far edge of the garden, where the bioluminescence dimmed and the city pressed its forehead against the glass. "Tell me about this building," he said. "The Octave." The skyline looked like a million ideas no one had finished, drone lanes braided like shoelaces. The night had a hum you could mistake for silence. "It's quiet," Lena said. "So you've mentioned." Victor slid his hands into his pockets like a man who always knew what he'd find there. "How did you get in?" "That building is exclusive friends," Lena said, non-committal. "You mean clients," he said, gentler. "You're anti-marketing. Investors like that feeling. They want to feel special without saying it, maybe." He angled himself so he could see her profile and the city at once. "I could get you a unit," he said, "if you liked it so much." "I'm settled," Lena said. "Lena." His tone softened, and she remembered being 7, looking up at a man who had always been taller than rooms. "I'm happy for you. But I don't like being surprised in my house." "It's an apartment," she said, mild, "not a stake in the Federal Reserve." He smiled thinly. "You know what I mean. Family, transparency. We don't keep big things from each other." "That's cute," she said, and let a little chalk into her voice. "How's your Singapore account?" He went very still. The house had chillers for this, keeping meat at the exact temperature to avoid spoilage. Victor accessed his, and his face cooled without freezing. "Touché," he said. "We're both adults." "I'm not hiding anything," Lena said. "I'm just not broadcasting it." "Broadcast," he said, "keeps markets honest." "Broadcast," she said, "keeps people noisy." He let it go because it wasn't going. "The octave," he said. "You like it there?" "I do." He studied her like a deal. "And you could afford it." "I can," she said. She didn't give him the satisfaction of a hedge. "I'm good at what I do." "What do you do?" he asked, this time a little genuinely. "I listen," she said. "I build spaces that listen." The words were stupid and true. He would never understand them because he would think he did. His laugh breathed out. "Sweet," he said, and the word curled and died before it reached her. He cut the moment with a practiced flick. "Come." "Your grandfather is about to talk." A hush rolled through the garden, not demanded, just absorbed. Grandpa had stood. No one had asked him to. No one would have. People around him seemed to fall into seats by gravitational accident. Lena saw it from the path through leaves, the slight stoop, the hands not quite steady on the back of his chair. The eyes were iron under silk. He scanned the family as if counting them without arithmetic. He waited until the drones recalibrated for human sound. "My turn," Grandpa said. His voice wasn't loud. It was right. It found the exact cavity in the air to resonate. "I'll tell a small story." The screenstones dimmed until the bioluminescent veins thought it was their job to hold the scene. Victor's big face disappeared. The garden smelled more like dirt and less like money. "When I was young," Grandpa said, "I didn't know how to make a house." He smiled faintly at Victor. "I only knew how to sleep under a roof." A thread of laughter moved, then stilled itself. "One day, a man wanted to sell me a building that wasn't worth the money. He talked and talked. He talked so much I went deaf." His eyes slid over Daniel, then Elise, then Clara, with a softness that left fingerprints when it passed. "So I went to see the building without him." Lena felt the story take the past in its teeth and pull. "The rooms were empty," Grandpa said. "No furniture, no smell, no sounds. I listened to how the quiet fit. It didn't. The echo was wrong. When I spoke, my voice came back to me thinner, so I didn't buy." He let his hands open, palms up. 2 years later, the building fell down. The new owner had crammed it with noise, signs and screens. He made too much of it try to speak. No one moved. Somewhere, a drone rebalanced a tray. "A while ago," Grandpa said, "I had another building. A small one this time. It was crooked from age, and the man who wanted it told me how he'd make it beautiful. He told me how loud it would be." He paused. When he smiled this time, it cut. "I took Lena to see it." A tilt in the garden's sound. The family's faces turned. The weight of their attention had temperature. Lena felt the heat gather against her forearms. Adrian stood at the edge of the group, eyes steady. "She didn't talk much," Grandpa said. Lena felt the flush in her cheeks deepen, even though nothing in his tone was designed to do that to a person. She stood in the middle and listened. She said, "The rooms want to be small. Don't make them big. Let the corners keep their shadows." Elise made a tiny face of disbelief, as if shadows were unbranded and therefore suspect. "I didn't sell," Grandpa said. "I let the rooms be small. They filled themselves." He looked at Lena and did that smile that other people called secret because it had more than one thing in it. Sometimes success isn't about the noise you make, it's about the life you build quietly, until one day people can't ignore it anymore. Clara made a sound like a muffled clink. Daniel's jaw flexed once, twice, a learned muscle. Victor's face didn't move, but his eyes did, flicking to catalogue the reactions like a security guard. Adrian's mouth curved almost imperceptibly, as if a promise had been kept to him by someone else. Lena didn't breathe, and then she did. She felt the rooms rearrange around the table in invisible ways. A chair a little closer, a shoulder unclenched, a laugh withheld. The garden's leaves chimed lightly in an entirely fabricated breeze. "Grandpa," Daniel said finally, playing at lightness. "That's adorable." The word landed and tried to stick. It slid. "It's true," Grandpa said. "It's sentimental," Elise said, too quick and then too slow. "But cute." "True," Grandpa repeated. He looked at her until she looked away. Victor recovered. He was built for this, to keep the tenor of a night. "Father," he said smoothly, "you always did have a good ear." He chuckled as if chuckling were the same as agreeing. "And Lena always liked small things." He turned the room back to himself with a half shrug. "We can be proud of our little artist." Grandpa's eyes didn't leave Lena. It felt like the way a good hand sits on your shoulder, weight, warmth, direction. He sat without ceremony. The drones, which had been waiting to breathe, breathed. Whispers knit themselves like lace around the edges of the group. Words had disappeared, their echoes buzzed. Lena felt all the layers of the evening adjust. Elise's glam lowered a degree, Daniel's feed stopped posting automatically and waited for a manual intervention. Clara's attention split in two and tried to be everywhere. A notification pinged in Victor's ear and got itself killed with a violent thought. Adrian came to stand near Lena and did not touch her. "You okay?" he said quietly. She made a small face, a shrug contained in a blink. "That was not my doing." "I know," he said. "That was his." "He shouldn't have," she said. She didn't mean it. She did. She hadn't wanted to be the center, but she had wanted not to be the edge. "You're not the center," Adrian said. "You're a gravity source. That sounds heavy." "It sounds like not being thrown." Clara materialized, smile sharper now. "Lena, honey, you'll forgive an old woman her curiosity. She was not old, she was venom in chiffon." "What exactly did you do for your grandfather?" "Stage the rooms with ethically sourced light." "Clara," Grandpa said from his seat, without raising his voice. Clara pretended not to hear. "I'm just asking," she said. "It's all so mysterious, and mystery is so useful for reputation if handled properly." "Mystery is useful for truth if not handled at all," Adrian said, pleasant. Clara's mouth puckered like a side effect. Victor put himself between them with a smile that had de-escalation algorithms baked into it. "We're happy for Lena," he said with a warmth that chilled. "Now, if everyone would follow me, there's a little something I'd like to show." Screens lit like obedient stars along the garden wall. The family feed blossomed in tasteful fonts. It was a highlight reel of the evening built in real time, spliced with public metrics, follower spikes, sentiment waves, hashtags that thought they were witty. Victor's media team queued up a section called The Holden Standard, a family of achievement. Lena braced without moving. Clips of Daniel with his car, Elise trying on 4 dresses in a stuttering loop, Tara on a panel speaking quickly and slicing up a man twice her age, Clara arranging flowers as if it were a UN summit, Victor cutting ribbon on a school, a hospital, a factory. Grandpa was seen only in the backs of other people's footage, always turned away as if walking out of frame. Then, to Lena's surprise, a clip of her surfaced, 5 seconds from the table when she had said, "To small lives, wine lifted." The caption read, #SmallBig. The sentiment meter turned amber, then green. People liked it. People liked it because it was neat and fit on a t-shirt. "See?" Victor said, triumphant like a man who had caught a wild thing and didn't notice it was a shadow. Even the modest ones have lines. Lena watched herself toast again. The 5 seconds looked like theatre. It was theatre. She felt the itch to peel her own skin off. Lovely, Clara sighed. Maybe we can lean into this. Lena, dear, would you be open to a little content collaboration? We could shoot you in your tiny apartment, coffee in hand, all that. We'd do it tastefully, of course. Focus on your authenticity. The Octave doesn't allow cameras, Lena said. Clara blinked. Don't be silly. They don't, Lena said, gentle. You can bring your eyes. You can leave with memory. That's it. That's absurd, Elise said, amused and appalled in equal measure. It's policy, Lena said. Victor's attention moved like heat. Policy, he repeated. Who wrote it? Lena smiled without letting any teeth show. Someone who knows the value of the things you don't post. I'd like to meet them, Victor said. You will, Adrian murmured, and only Lena heard it. Daniel, who had been pulling a smile over his face like a sweater that didn't fit, snapped a laugh. This is cute, he said. Mystery building, quiet girl, Grandpa's endorsement. Tell me there isn't a PR team behind this. Everyone's in brand now, cousin, I'm not, Lena said, and left space for him to assume that meant failure. You will be, he said, with the confidence of a person who believed that water wanted to be a pool if it tried hard enough. Tara appeared at Daniel's elbow like a legal counsel at a deposition, not on his side, on the side of precision. Your bleeding sentiment, she murmured. Stop talking. Daniel shut his mouth with an audible click. A server arrived with a tray of tiny espresso cups that steamed like ideas. Grandpa held one and didn't drink. He looked around the family as if he were counting years. Victor clapped his hands lightly. Announcements, he said, cheerful. The garden lights responded, brightening. You've all performed beautifully and Victor, Grandpa said. The name was a lever. Victor's mouth paused on the shape of a word and then found a new one. Father, he said. Of course. Grandpa looked at Lena and then at the others. I'm tired, he said simply, but before I go home, I'll say one more thing. The garden waited. I've watched you all build towers, he said. They're very beautiful. They make light at night so people don't get lost. He smiled at Victor, proud and exact. Don't forget to visit the ground. The ground is where people live. Clara's laugh was liquid, meant to make things easy. Father, you'll make us cry. Grandpa didn't answer. He turned to Adrian as if remembering a name from long ago. And you, he said, you keep your feet. Yes, sir, Adrian said, and it wasn't a performance. It was a vow to a man he respected because respect is a different kind of currency and it spends less easily. Then Grandpa's gaze slid back to Lena. It softened without losing focus. Lena felt something in her chest do a quiet, careful thing, like a bird retucking its head. He set the espresso down. He stood. The house, which had learned the patterns of this family like a clever child, opened a door where there wasn't one. He walked through it without needing to say goodbye. Victor let the moment drain and then filled the vacuum. Well, he said, gratitude and irritation braided. Dessert. The garden exhaled. Conversation resumed as if it had been paused by a hand, not an event. But the notes were wrong now. Someone had moved the key. Daniel talked in half steps. Elise's laugh had an echo. Clara smiled with her entire surface area and forgot to warm anything under it. Tara's gaze was an index. Adrian stayed where he was. Lena stood with her back to the city and felt the blue glass press against her shoulder blades. You didn't break, Adrian said. I don't need to break, Lena said. She turned her head. The side of his face looked like a side of his face. It pleased her too much. You will, he said, but not here. Comforting. True. True is so fashionable this season, she said. He laughed. It's unfashionable. That's why it's interesting Clara floated over again, dragging Elise by the elbow. "Lena, sweet pea," she said, breath smelling of peppermint financed by a subscription. "We are planning a charity event next month with Aurora. Mental health for underbranded youth." She didn't see Lena's mouth. "Would you consider speaking? A tiny little bit about living small. It would be huge." "The octave doesn't allow cameras," Lena repeated mildly. "Cameras love you," Clara said. "They can love me from a distance," Lena said. Adrian reached and plucked a leaf from the air. It wasn't a leaf. It was a screen shaped like a leaf, some designer's little joke. He folded it until it shut itself off. He set it on a stone that wasn't a stone, and it stayed. Victor approached with Daniel behind him like a shadow with opinions. "Before you go tonight," Victor said smoothly, the way a salesman starts a sentence that has a legal end, "I have a small ask." Lena said. "I'm assembling an advisory council," he said, "a new fund. It will need a youth perspective. You're adept at authenticity. I think it would be good for your profile." He smiled kindly when he said, "for your profile," as if offering medicine. Daniel's eyes widened a fraction. "She doesn't have the background for that." "She'd be a face," Victor said. "We'd handle the work." Lena looked at him. There were so many ways to say no. She chose the one that held a mirror up and didn't fog it. "Thank you," she said, and meant the part of it that was an acknowledgement of her existence. "I don't have time." Victor's smile held. It had nowhere else to go. "Everyone has time." "Not for everything," she said. She let her gaze slide to Adrian and then off. "I'm building something." Victor's eyes narrowed a millimeter. It was his version of flinching. "You could build it with us." "I could," she said. "I won't." Daniel laughed, delighted that she had given him a ball to throw. "Oh my God," he said. "Are you serious? She thinks she's a disruptor." "I think I'm busy," Lena said. Adrian tilted his head, interested. "She is." Daniel rolled his eyes. "Of course you're on her side." "I like the ground," Adrian said. "Remember?" "Be careful," Daniel said to Lena, friendly now, the way a cat is friendly to a mouse it doesn't intend to eat yet. "The ground is dirty." "It's where things grow," Lena said. Victor's gaze swept the garden and found the cameras. He softened his profile to the feed. "We'll talk later," he said. The words were equal parts offer and threat. He turned, taking Daniel with him, and walked toward a knot of men whose faces Lena recognized from billboards that sold helping the poor to people with money. Elise loitered a moment longer. "Are you really with Adrian?" she said, and made her mouth round like gossip entering it. Lena lifted a brow. He's a guest." Elise said, pleased with herself. "So am I." Elise drifted off, dress using her like a runway. "Do you want to leave?" Adrian asked. "We could lie to your uncle and tell him you had an early morning." "He'd know," Lena said. "He always knows when someone wants to be somewhere else more than in his presence." "It insults him. Then stay and insult him politely." "That's the plan." "Good." Adrian's glance bounced from her mouth to her eyes and lodged. "Do you need me to be more obvious? Or less?" She let a laugh slip out. It felt expensive. "Neither," she said. "Just be where I can see you." "Always?" He tipped his glass and drained it finally. "I can do that." The garden was warm now, with people trying to remember how to be normal after a short, undramatic earthquake. The screens replayed the highlight reel on a 10-minute loop. Grandpa was gone. His absence sat on the bench like a coat. The vines were still luminous. The city still glowed with other people's conclusions. Somewhere a piano sample argued with a cello line about who deserved the foreground. Lena moved through the room the way a person moves through a pool, resistance at the skin. People turned toward her and then remembered their brand commitments. Tara caught her eye and gave a nod that said, "I'm not sentimental, but I'm not stupid either." Clara hovered and then retreated, calculating to the 8th decimal. Elise took another photo of herself with her back to the view because that was the view. Daniel flirted with a woman who didn't like him and couldn't find the setting to adjust that. She found the bench Grandpa had used and sat where the warmth had started to surrender. Adrian didn't sit. He leaned against a tree that had never seen dirt and looked at her like a question had been answered in a language he was relieved to know. Her cuff rested against her wrist, dark. She had turned the notifications off before she arrived, a choice cast like a spell. If she raised her hand now and snapped her fingers, 3 contracts would unfurl like silk, and one message would send itself to a board that would startle and then smile, and then email their lawyers. She could upend the pecking order with a gesture undone by another gesture. She didn't. Victor's media team had found a new segment, Behind the Brand. It showed B-roll of Victor at his desk, framed in trimming lines. The desk was a slab of marble that would outlive name changes. Words floated like benevolent drones: vision, stewardship, family. They all meant Victor. Lena's pulse found a new rhythm. It matched the slow deceleration of a machine that had realized it had been running in a room with no door. "Tell me the thing," Adrian said. He kept his voice so soft she could have pretended not to hear. "Tell me the part you want to break." She stared at the city. Somewhere down there, the octave sat like a secret everyone had heard a rumor about, and only a few had found the stairs to. The building had rules that read like poems if you squinted. No screens in common spaces. All doors strangers are allowed to pass through are wide. The elevator plays nothing. The library is not a library. It is a room with books that don't belong to anyone. Plants are not decor. Music is for evenings and mornings, never afternoons. The roof is for lying down. Silence is a kind of hospitality. "I want to tell them that the thing I built happened because I wasn't invited to the rooms that make this house," she said. "I want to tell them that being ignored is better fuel than being praised. I want to tell them they taught me what not to do." "Do it," he said. "I won't," she said. "Good," he said. She turned her head. "Good. If you tell them, they'll swallow it," he said. "They'll digest it into language they own. They'll build a wing in your name and make sure no one understands what you meant anymore." He smiled. "Keep your ground." She watched him watch her and let herself feel the thing that wanted to move inside her chest. It wasn't romance. It wasn't even hunger. It was alignment. Sometimes the right person speaking to you felt like a level clicking true. "Okay," she said. "Okay," he said. Victor's voice lifted again, and people went to it. He was ready to end the night with something large and generous that would remind them how to clap. He spoke about a new fund, about responsibility, about being pioneers in humane capitalism. The words were homed, trained, eager to please. He announced numbers that made Daniel's smile real and Elise's eyes brighter. The garden applauded on cue. The drones released microglitter made from biodegradable whatever. It fell and looked like expensive dandruff. Lena clapped with her hands, not her heart. It wasn't anger, it was clarity. The secret inside her shifted, not heavy now, just present, like a coin in a palm that you decide not to flip. Grandpa's line hovered in the air, an overlay no one else could swipe away, the life you build quietly, the table you turn by, not touching it, the revenge that doesn't ask for applause. Adrian dipped his head once, a private toast. Lena returned it. The tide, if it could be called that, had turned without sea spray. The family, even when it laughed, had something wet in its shoes. "Ready?" Adrian asked. "For what?" "To stay until Victor believes he let you go." She stood. "Always," she said, and smiled a little because the word felt like an anchor and a sail at the same time. They rejoined the crowd. Lena let herself be spoken at. She offered precise replies, spent no adjectives where a noun would do. Even her nods were curated to minimize exhaustion. Twice someone asked for her contact and she gave them a card without a QR code. Their confusion was a small meal. They would have to type her name. "Lena," Elise said at one point, half earnest. "You looked pretty when Grandpa talked." "Thank you," Lena said. She didn't deserve the kindness, but took it. "You looked expensive when you did." Elise laughed for real. "Finally," she said, "you see me." "I always did," Lena said, and watched the words land. Daniel approached with a gentler face. He had swapped the Porsche for eyes that could almost be brothers. "You were good tonight," he said, monkey bars easy. "I was quiet tonight," Lena said. "Same thing," he said, and for a second it was like being children again and slipping out of a party to make fun of the adults. Then his cuff pinged, he glanced down, and the spell was gone. "I have to go be impressive. Godspeed," she said. Clara, overhearing, sighed, as though sighing were aerobics. "You know," she murmured to Lena, conspiratorial, "I only tease you because I care." "I know," Lena said. "Do you?" Clara's eyes glittered like small stones. "Because if you ever want to be—" She stopped. She had been about to say, "like us." She edited in real time. "Bigger." "I am not small," Lena said. Clara's smile didn't hold. "Of course you are," she said, and cooed at someone else as if she hadn't. Adrian reappeared. He had that knack. Disappearing without leaving, returning without coming. "Want to see something?" he asked. "What?" He tipped his head toward the far corner of the garden, where a shadow made of architecture and money was thicker than in other corners. "A door," he said. "That isn't for guests." "Don't be obvious," she said. "Always," he said. They walked there the long way, which is to say the truthful way. No pretense of accidentally arriving. A panel recognized something in Adrian and sighed open. Behind it, a small balcony hung like a thought someone forgot to finish. The city opened its mouth and inhaled them. "It's where I go when the noise flosses my teeth," Adrian said. "Gross," Lena said, smiling. The wind was a thing manufactured in ductwork, but found a way to be itself on your face. They stood in quiet that was louder than music. Lena looked down at the city that measured everything and found a new unit of measure inside herself. It was not a number, it was weight, it was shape. "Your grandfather," Adrian said. "Yes?" "He's the only rich man I've ever seen who looks lighter when he stops talking." "That's because he thinks with his mouth closed," Lena said. Adrian laughed. "That's rare." "That's why he's rare." They watched the octave in the distance, or they watched where Lena's eyes went, which was the same. The building didn't glow, it absorbed. "You're going back there tonight," Adrian said. "I am. Alone?" She glanced at him. The question sat between them with paws out. "Yes," she said, then playing fair. "For now." "Good," he said. "I like long games." "You sound like my grandfather." "I'd be honored," he said. They didn't touch. They didn't need to. The tension was the thread that held the cloth straight. Eventually they went back inside, where dessert pretended to be art and people pretended to be full. Victor was waiting near the exit like a tide you had to surf or be knocked on your back by. He took Lena's hand in both of his and kissed the air above it. "You were very present," he said. "I was here," Lena said. "You'll come by the office," he said. "We'll talk about the council." "No," Lena said, and gave him the kindness of a smile when she said it. He didn't let the tiny flinch reach his eyebrows. "Another time." "Maybe," she said, meaning like weather. "Adrian," Victor said, turning the face he used on judges. "My home is yours." "Thank you," Adrian said, and made it feel as if he really were grateful to a house. They left together, but not as a pair. They waited at the lift where the air was colder and more honest. The glass doors reflected them both, elongated and human. "What was the thing you could have said?" Adrian asked as the lift arrived. "I could have told them the octave is a cooperative," she said. That the board doesn't take money, it takes hours. That I own more than an apartment. How much more? Enough to matter, she said. The lift opened like an eye. They stepped in. Enough to change who asks whom for things by next year. He looked at her and let the floor drop. Ah, he said, the sound of two ideas clicking. So that's the part of the table you'll turn. I won't turn it, she said. I'll build another and watch which chairs move. The lift descended. The city rose. The drones made their lines and pretended to be stars. Lena's phone, mute, patient, rested in her pocket like a sleeping animal. Inside it, the messages waited. Outside it, Adrian waited. Beyond both, the octave waited with its quiet rules and its loud impact. When the doors opened, the night air came in like a friend you hadn't seen in a while. Adrian stepped aside to let her go first. He did not reach for her arm, but his hand hovered where it would be if she needed it. Good night, Lena, he said. Good night, she said. Don't ruin your reputation. Maybe I like ruining it, he said, his voice a familiar warmth. For you. She had wanted to kiss him right then. Instead, she put a finger against his lapel, pressed lightly, and left a small heat that would cool without evidence. Don't get sloppy, she said. Never, he said, and the word followed her out into the hovering dark, where the city's noise wrapped around her, and then let her go. She took the commuter lift down, the same way she had come up. The difference now was inside her ribs. It wasn't victory, it wasn't revenge. It was the turn in a tide that hadn't wanted to turn for a very long time, and was only now admitting it had always been coming. The street caught her softly. The octave was a long gaze away. She walked into it as if she were walking into her own mouth to find the words she had sworn to save for when they meant the most. Behind her, in a house built to be heard, the echoes kept talking. In front of her, in a building built to listen, the silence waited like an answer. The dining hall didn't return to normal after Adrian's comment in Act 2. It couldn't. Conversations buzzed with new energy, no longer flowing in Victor's controlled channels. Lena, who had been used to fading into the background, now found herself at the center of every glance. Admiring, skeptical, jealous, each carried its own flavor. The light from the city skyline washed across the glass walls, reflecting off crystal glasses and gleaming silverware. Lena sat quietly, posture steady, heart pounding in her chest, but not in her expression. She knew what the others were thinking. If she's living in that building, what else has she been hiding? She didn't need to answer yet. The silence, stretched just long enough, was power. Daniel broke first. So, Lena, he said with forced casualness, tapping the edge of his glass, what exactly do you do to afford a place like that? His tone carried disbelief, wrapped in a smile. The cousin who never smiled without a dagger behind it. I work, Lena said. She let the pause linger, sipping her wine, eyes meeting his. You should try it sometime. A soft laugh rippled from Adrian. Daniel's face tightened. Elise leaned in, too sweet to be innocent. But isn't that building reputation gated? Only top-tier profiles, right? I didn't realize marketing could climb that high. It can, Lena said. Depends how you use it. Her words weren't defensive, just clean, clipped, impossible to attack. Elise leaned back, unsatisfied. Adrian leaned an elbow on the table, looking amused. Seems to me half this table is suddenly very curious about what Lena's been up to. Maybe curiosity is the sincerest form of envy, Daniel scoffed. Nobody's envious. We're just surprised. That's all. Adrian tilted his head. Surprised she might be ahead of you? The jab landed. Daniel bristled, and Lena felt the spark of satisfaction, though she kept her face serene. Uncle Victor, who had been quiet longer than usual, finally placed his utensils down with deliberate care. His presence re-anchored the table. Lena, he said, voice calm but edged, it's impressive truly if you've managed to secure a place like that. But we're family. We share things here. Why not tell us sooner? The implication was clear. How dare you disrupt the hierarchy without permission? Lena folded her hands in her lap, pulse steady. Because you never asked. Usually, you're all too busy talking about yourselves. The air crackled. A few cousins smirked involuntarily before hiding it. Victor's jaw tightened. Grandpa's eyes twinkled from his end of the table. He didn't speak, not yet. But Lena caught his look. Well played. Tara, the lawyer cousin, tried to regain control. Still, it's unusual. People usually climb step by step. Small place, bigger place, then maybe a tower like that in their 40s. You skipped ahead. How? Creativity, Lena replied. Not everyone has to follow the same staircase. Adrian's smile widened, sharp and admiring at once. She built her own staircase. I like that the words weren't just compliment, they were provocation. Tara flushed slightly, unused to being out-debated by implication alone. Daniel, not letting go, said louder, Bet it's just rented. Alone. Nothing special. Funny, Adrian said, turning his gaze on him. That's exactly what I thought about your Porsche outside. The one your algorithm parked crooked? The table erupted in muffled laughter. Daniel turned scarlet. Lena hid a smile in her glass. Adrian wasn't rescuing her. He was playing alongside her. The rhythm between them hummed like current through hidden wires. Later, when dessert plates were cleared, Lena slipped into the kitchen under the excuse of fetching more wine. The air smelled of cinnamon steam and roasted sugar. The hum of cooling units filled the space. She reached for a bottle, only to find Adrian already there, leaning against the counter, holding it casually in one hand. Looking for this? His grin was infuriating and magnetic. She crossed her arms. So you make a habit of stirring fires at family dinners? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Only when someone's worth watching burn brighter. The air between them thickened. Lena's breath caught, though she masked it with a raised eyebrow. You realize they're all speculating now? About us? Good, Adrian said. He leaned just close enough that his words brushed her ear. You're letting them underestimate you. It makes you even more irresistible. Her laugh was quiet, sharp. Irresistible? Careful, you'll ruin your perfect guest reputation. Maybe I like ruining it, he murmured. For you. Heat curled low in her stomach, but she turned away first, grabbing the bottle from his hand. Then let's ruin it with style. When they walked back out together, whispers followed. Eyes flicked between them. The story had already started to write itself. As coffee and sweets were served, the conversation tilted again. For once, it wasn't Daniel or Elise steering it. All eyes drifted toward Grandpa, who set down his cup with deliberate slowness. I've listened, he said, voice quiet but commanding the room. To all the bragging. The cars, the clothes, the towers. And I've listened to Lena. The room hushed. Even Victor leaned back. Do you all remember that property deal years ago? Grandpa went on, when the developers tried to trick me with hidden clauses. Not one of you caught it. Not Victor, not Daniel, not Tara with all her law books. Lena did. Murmurs rippled. Tara stiffened. Grandpa smiled faintly. She solved it with nothing but her wit and a notepad. Saved me a fortune, more than some of you flaunt in a year. That day I saw what real value looks like. Success isn't about the noise you make. It's about the life you build quietly. Until one day people can't ignore it anymore. Silence, heavy, shifting. No one laughed now. Lena's throat tightened. She hadn't expected Grandpa to reveal that, or to defend her so directly. The warmth was sharper than pride, it was vindication. Elise tried to salvage the hierarchy. That's very sweet, Grandpa, but times are different now. Visibility is value. If you're not seen, you don't exist. Grandpa shook his head slowly. If you need to shout to prove you exist, maybe you don't. Elise faltered. Adrian raised his glass. I'll drink to that. He looked at Lena as he said it. The sparkle in his gaze wasn't just admiration, it was alignment, partnership. Victor cleared his throat, regaining composure. Well, Lena, it seems you've surprised us, but don't mistake surprise for acceptance. In this family, legacy matters, stability. We've all built ours in the open. What you've built, if it's real, is still untested. The words were a challenge, one last attempt to re-establish dominance. Lena set her fork down gently. Then I'll keep building. With or without acceptance. Legacy isn't handed down at this table, it's made out there. She gestured toward the skyline. And mine doesn't need your permission. The quiet afterward was profound. No one rushed to reply. Adrian, after a beat, reached across the table and took her hand. Bold, visible. His thumb brushed lightly against her knuckles, but his gaze stayed fixed on Victor. Some of us recognize a legacy in progress, he said smoothly. The cousin's jaws tightened. Clara blinked rapidly. Elise pursed her lips. Daniel looked like he'd swallowed glass. Lena's heart thudded, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she held Adrian's hand, calm as marble, as if the gesture had been hers all along. Grandpa leaned back, satisfaction radiating from the lines of his face. He let the silence stretch until it became reverence. Maybe, he said at last, voice carrying across the table, the real wealth isn't in what you show off, but in who you become. No one argued. They couldn't. As the night wound down, the family's eyes followed Lena differently. No longer dismissive, no longer mocking. A mixture now, admiration, unease, envy. Whispers would spread after tonight, not about Daniel's Porsche, not about Elise's wardrobe, about Lena, the cousin they had underestimated, the one who had flipped the table without raising her voice. When she rose to leave, Adrian stood with her. He didn't let go of her hand until the elevator doors closed, and even then, the warmth lingered. The city stretched below them, alive with light and noise. Lena exhaled, the tension unwinding in her chest. She hadn't planned this, not exactly, but she had known one thing from the start. Revenge didn't need to be loud. It only needed to be undeniable.